Mississippi, 1891. Into the darkness, 3 Rottweilers were set loose to track down a 12-year-old enslaved girl named Amelia. These dogs were bred and trained to kill. They had never failed a hunt before. The plantation owner figured they'd be back within an hour, 2 at most, dragging whatever remained of the child. But 8 hours came and went. Then the dogs finally returned. What they carried back with them made even the most brutal men on that plantation recoil in disbelief. What unfolded during those 8 hours would unearth a secret so devastating it would rattle the very core of everything they believed to be true. And it all began with a girl who wasn't even supposed to exist. Amelia was born in 1879. That was 14 years after the abolition of slavery in America. But out on the Thornhill plantation, tucked deep in rural Mississippi, no one had ever told the enslaved people that freedom had already come. The plantation was hidden away in the backwoods, miles from any town, surrounded by dense forests and swampland. The nearest sheriff had been bought off to ignore what happened there. Mail never arrived. Visitors never came. The 43 people who lived and died on that land genuinely believed they were still property. They believed escape meant certain death. They believed it because they were told that every single day. Amelia's mother passed away giving birth to her. Her father was sold off before she could even walk. She was raised by an elderly woman named Ruth, who used to whisper stories of a world beyond the trees. Ruth told her about a war that was supposed to have set them all free. But Ruth also warned her never to repeat those words out loud, because Thomas Thornhill, the plantation owner, had killed people for far less. Amelia worked in the main house. She scrubbed floors. She hauled water. She served meals while being reminded constantly that she was fortunate to receive scraps. She learned to fade into the background. But deep inside, something smoldered. A question Ruth had planted years ago. If we're truly free, why are we still here? On the night of October 14, 1891, Amelia made a decision that would alter everything. She fled. Amelia slipped out just past midnight. She carried nothing with her. No food, no blanket, not even shoes. She wore only the thin cotton dress she worked in. The moon was barely a sliver in the sky. The darkness was so complete she couldn't see her own hands in front of her face. But she ran anyway. She ran because staying meant a slow death, and running meant a quick one. But at least it meant she had a choice. She headed east. Ruth had once told her that east led to the river, and the river led to towns where black people lived freely. Ruth said it was a 2-day journey on foot if you knew the way. Amelia didn't know the way, but she ran. Back at the plantation, one of the women woke up to use the outhouse. She noticed Amelia's pallet was empty. She checked the main house. She checked the kitchen. Then fear drove her to do what she did next. She woke the overseer. His name was Cyrus Gann. He was the kind of man who smiled when he inflicted pain. He had been overseeing Thornhill's plantation for 9 years. He had caught runaways before. He took pleasure in it. Cyrus walked slowly to the dog pen. 3 Rottweilers stood behind the iron gate. Their names were Brutus, Caesar, and Nero. Each weighed over 100 pounds. They had been trained since puppyhood to track and attack. Cyrus fed them raw meat and kept them hungry. He brought them Amelia's blanket from her pallet. The dogs sniffed it. Their eyes locked onto the scent. Cyrus opened the gate. "Find her," he commanded. The dogs bolted into the night. Amelia heard them. She was maybe a mile into the woods when the barking started. Distant at first, then closer, until she could hear their paws pounding the earth. She ran faster. Branches clawed at her face and arms. Thorns tore into her feet. She couldn't see where she was going. She tripped over roots and rocks, but she kept scrambling back up. The barking grew louder. She came to a creek. The water was cold and swift. Ruth had once told her that water could mask your scent. Amelia jumped in. The current pulled her downstream. She grabbed onto a rock and held tight. The water soaked her dress and made it heavy. She stayed there, chest deep. Shivering, listening. The barking stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of the creek and her own heartbeat thumping in her ears. She waited. She didn't move. Then she heard it sniffing. The dogs were at the edge of the creek just upstream. They paced back and forth, trying to pick up her scent again. Amelia sank deeper into the water. She let the current carry her farther downstream. She kept her head just above the surface. The cold was numbing her fingers. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. But she kept moving. The dogs caught the scent again. They splashed into the creek and started coming downstream. Amelia pulled herself out onto the opposite bank and ran again. Her dress clung to her body. Every step felt like dragging stones. Her legs were cramping. Her lungs burned. But she didn't stop. She ran for another hour, maybe more. Time seemed to vanish. There was only the running and the sound of the dogs getting closer again. She didn't know where she was. The trees all looked identical. The darkness swallowed everything. She was lost. Then she spotted it. A cabin. It sat in a small clearing, half collapsed, covered in vines. The roof had caved in on one side. The door hung loose from its hinges. It appeared abandoned. Amelia didn't care. She ran inside and pulled the broken door shut behind her. She pressed her back against the wall and slid down to the floor. Her chest heaved. Her whole body trembled. The barking was close now, maybe 50 yards away, maybe less. Amelia scanned the cabin. There was nothing inside. No furniture, no tools, just dirt and rotting wood and shadows. She crawled into the corner farthest from the door and curled into a ball. She closed her eyes. She prayed for the first time in years. She didn't know if God listened to girls like her, but she prayed anyway. The barking stopped again. She heard the dogs outside. She heard their claws scraping against the wooden walls. She heard them sniffing at the gaps in the door. She held her breath. Then one of them barked, a sharp, vicious sound. They had found her. The door exploded inward. Brutus came through first. His teeth were bared. His eyes were wild. Caesar and Nero followed right behind him. They filled the small cabin with snarling and snapping. Amelia screamed. She pressed herself into the corner. There was nowhere to go. Brutus lunged. Then something happened. The floor gave way. Amelia fell through the rotted wood and dropped into darkness. She hit the ground hard. The air was knocked out of her lungs. She gasped and coughed, trying to understand where she was. Above her, she could hear the dogs barking and clawing at the hole she had fallen through, but they didn't follow. The hole was too small. Amelia was in a cellar. It was pitch black. She couldn't see anything. She felt around with her hands. The walls were dirt. The floor was dirt. It smelled like mold and decay, but it was deep, maybe 10 feet down. The dogs couldn't reach her. She sat there in the dark, shaking, listening to the dogs rage above her. Hours passed. The dogs didn't leave. They stayed at the edge of the hole, barking and growling. Amelia's body ached. Her feet were bleeding. Her dress was still wet and cold. She wrapped her arms around herself and waited. She didn't know what else to do. Then the barking changed. It got quieter, uncertain. The dogs were sniffing at something. Amelia heard them move away from the hole. She heard their claws on the cabin floor. They were distracted by something. She waited. The barking stopped completely. Silence. Amelia didn't move. She didn't trust it. She stayed in the cellar, breathing as quietly as she could. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. She couldn't tell anymore. Then she heard a voice. Girl. It was a woman's voice, old, rough. It came from above, from somewhere inside the cabin. Girl, you down there? Amelia didn't answer. She didn't know if it was a trick. I ain't going to hurt you. Them dogs is gone. You can come up now. Amelia's throat was too dry to speak. She swallowed hard. Who are you? She whispered. Someone who ain't supposed to be here neither. Come on up. I got water. Amelia hesitated. Then she reached up and found a piece of wood sticking out from the wall. She used it to pull herself up. She climbed slowly, carefully, until she could see through the hole. A face looked down at her. An old black woman with silver hair and deep lines around her eyes. She reached down and helped pull Amelia out of the cellar. Amelia stood on shaking legs. She looked around the cabin. The dogs were gone. The woman stood in front of her holding a tin cup. Drink, the woman said. Amelia took the cup and drank. The water was warm, but it was the best thing she had ever tasted. She drank until the cup was empty. Where did the dogs go? Amelia asked. The woman smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, it was sad and knowing. I sent them away, she said. How? Same way I've been sending away everything that comes looking for me. I know things. Things that scare dogs, things that scare men, too. Amelia stared at her. Who are you? My name is Esther. I've been living in these woods for near 40 years. I was enslaved once, long time ago. I ran, they sent dogs after me too. But I learned how to survive. I learned how to hide. And I learned how to fight back in ways they don't understand. Amelia's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor. Are they coming back? She asked. The dogs? No. I put something in the air they don't like. Old root magic. My grandmother taught me. But the men, they going to come eventually. They always do. What do I do? Esther knelt down in front of her. She put a hand on Amelia's shoulder. You rest. Then you keep running. But this time, you run smart. I'll show you the way. Amelia slept for 2 hours on the dirt floor of that broken cabin. When she woke, dawn was breaking through the cracks in the walls. Esther sat near the door, watching the tree line. She had a knife in her hand. It was old and rusted but sharp. They'll come soon, Esther said without turning around. The dogs went back. The men will want to know why they came back without you. Amelia sat up. Her body screamed with pain. Every muscle was tight. Her feet were swollen and crusted with dried blood. She looked down at them and felt tears coming. She pushed them back down. How far is the river? Amelia asked. 2 days if you move fast. 3 if you don't. But you ain't going to the river. Amelia looked at her. Why not? Because they know that's where runaways go. They'll have men waiting there. You go to the river, you get caught, or worse. Then where do I go? Esther finally turned to look at her. Her eyes were hard but not unkind. North. There's a settlement about 4 days from here. Free black folks. They don't ask questions. They don't turn people away. But the path is rough. Swampland, gators, snakes. Most people don't make it. Most people don't make it here either, Amelia said. Esther smiled a little. You got some fire in you. Good, you'll need it. Esther stood and walked to the corner of the cabin. She moved some loose boards and pulled out a small sack. Inside was dried meat, a piece of hard bread, and a tin of water. She handed it to Amelia. This will get you through 2 days if you're careful. After that, you got to find food yourself. You know what plants you can eat. Amelia shook her head. Esther sighed. Then you're going to learn fast, or you're going to starve. She knelt down next to Amelia and started wrapping her feet with strips of cloth torn from an old blanket. The cloth was rough, but it was better than nothing. Why are you helping me? Amelia asked. Esther didn't answer right away. She tied off the cloth and sat back. Because somebody helped me once. Long time ago. And I swore if I ever got the chance, I'd do the same. That's all. She stood up and walked back to the door. You need to go now. They're coming. I can feel it. Amelia stood. Her legs still shook, but they held her. She took the sack and slung it over her shoulder. "What about you?" "I'll be fine. I always am." Amelia walked to the door. She stopped and looked back at Esther. "Thank you." Esther nodded. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you make it." Amelia stepped out of the cabin and into the woods. The morning air was cool. Birds were starting to sing. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Then she heard it. Voices, men's voices. They were far away but getting closer. She ran. Esther watched her disappear into the trees. Then she turned and walked back into the cabin. She sat down in the center of the room and waited. She had done this before. She knew what was coming. 15 minutes later, Cyrus Gann arrived with 5 other men. They had guns and torches even though it was daylight. They surrounded the cabin. Cyrus kicked the door open and stepped inside. He saw Esther sitting there, calm as anything. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Where's who?" Esther asked. Cyrus raised his rifle and pointed it at her face. "The girl. The dogs tracked her here. Where is she?" Esther looked at him like he was a child throwing a tantrum. "Ain't no girl here, just me. And I've been here alone for years. Your dogs must have lost the scent." Cyrus looked around the cabin. He saw the hole in the floor. He walked over and looked down into the cellar. It was empty. He turned back to Esther. "You're lying. Believe what you want. Don't make it true." One of the other men stepped forward. "Cyrus, we're wasting time. The girl's long gone. Let's go." Cyrus stared at Esther for a long moment. Then he lowered his rifle. "If I find out you helped her, I'll come back and I won't be kind." Esther said nothing. Cyrus and his men left. Esther listened to their footsteps fade into the distance. Then she stood up, grabbed her knife, and walked out the back of the cabin. She had her own running to do now. Amelia moved through the woods as fast as her broken feet would let her. The cloth wrappings helped, but every step still hurt. She followed the direction Esther had pointed her toward. North, toward the swamp, toward something that might be freedom or might be death. She didn't let herself think about it too much. By midday, the trees started to change. They grew thicker, darker. The ground became soft and wet. She could smell the swamp before she saw it. It smelled like rot and standing water, and things that had died a long time ago. She stopped at the edge of the swamp and stared. It stretched out in front of her like a black mirror. Trees rose out of the water, their roots twisted and gnarled. Moss hung from the branches like old curtains. The water was still, too still. She knew what that meant. Gators. She had 2 choices: go through the swamp or go around it. Going around would take days. Days she didn't have, so she stepped into the water. It was warm. It came up to her knees. Then her waist. Then her chest. The bottom was soft mud that sucked at her feet with every step. She kept her arms above the water and moved slowly. She didn't want to make noise. She didn't want to attract attention. Something brushed against her leg. She froze. She looked down but couldn't see through the dark water. She waited. The thing moved away. She kept walking. It took her 3 hours to cross the swamp. When she finally pulled herself onto dry land on the other side, she collapsed. Her whole body was shaking. The cloth wrappings on her feet had come loose and floated away somewhere in the water. Her dress was covered in mud and slime. She smelled like death. She lay there for a long time. The sun was setting. She knew she needed to move. She knew she needed to find shelter before dark, but her body wouldn't respond. She was so tired, so hungry, so broken. Then she heard something. Footsteps. She forced herself to sit up. A figure emerged from the trees. A man. He was black tall. He carried a rifle. Amelia's heart sank. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. The man stopped a few feet away from her. He looked her up and down. "You running?" he asked. Amelia didn't answer. She didn't know if she could trust him. "It's all right," he said. "I ain't going to hurt you. I'm running too." He lowered his rifle and set it on the ground. Then he sat down across from her. "My name's Marcus. I've been free for 6 months now. I'm heading north to the settlement. You headed that way too?" Amelia nodded slowly. "How far?" she asked. 3 more days if we move steady. Less if we push hard. But you look like you ain't got much push left in you." "I'll make it," Amelia said. Marcus studied her face. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of dried fish. He handed it to her. "Eat. You ain't going to make it anywhere on an empty stomach." Amelia took the fish and ate. It was salty and tough, but it was food. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. "Where'd you come from?" Marcus asked. "Thornhill Plantation." Marcus's face changed. He looked surprised, then angry. "Thornhill. That place is supposed to be abandoned. Everybody knows the war freed the slaves 30 years ago." "Not there," Amelia said. "Nobody told us. Nobody came. We didn't know." Marcus stared at her. "How many people still there?" 43. "Maybe less now. People die. They don't get replaced." Marcus stood up. He paced back and forth. He looked like he wanted to break something. "That son of a—" He stopped himself. He took a deep breath. "We got to tell somebody. When we get to the settlement, we got to tell somebody." "They won't believe us," Amelia said. "Nobody ever believes us." "They will because I'll make them." Amelia looked at him. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that someone would care. But she had learned a long time ago that wanting something didn't make it true. Marcus sat back down. "We'll rest here tonight. Move at first light. I'll keep watch. You sleep." "I can't sleep," Amelia said. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear the dogs. The dogs are gone. They always come back." Marcus didn't argue with her. He just nodded. "Then we'll stay awake together." They sat in silence as the sun disappeared and the darkness came. The woods filled with sounds. Crickets, frogs, owls, things rustling in the bushes. Amelia jumped at every noise. Marcus stayed calm. He had been doing this longer than her. He knew which sounds mattered and which didn't. Around midnight, Marcus spoke. "You got family back there?" "No, they're all gone. Dead or sold." "I don't know which." "I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm out now. That's all that matters." Marcus looked at her. "You're strong. Stronger than most people I've met. You're going to make it?" "You don't know that?" "Yeah, I do." Amelia didn't respond. She pulled her knees to her chest and stared into the darkness. Somewhere out there, Cyrus and his men were looking for her. Somewhere out there, the dogs were resting, waiting to be sent out again. Somewhere out there, 42 people were still living in chains, believing that's all there was. She thought about Ruth. She wondered if Ruth knew she had run. She wondered if Ruth was proud or terrified, or both. She wondered if she would ever see her again. She didn't let herself cry. Crying didn't help. It just made you weak, and she couldn't afford to be weak. Not now, not ever. As the night wore on, exhaustion finally won. Amelia's eyes closed. She slept sitting up, her head resting on her knees. She dreamed of dogs with red eyes and men with guns, and a river she could never reach. When she woke, Marcus was shaking her shoulder. "We got to go," he said. "Now, what's wrong?" "I heard voices about a mile back. They're coming this way." Amelia stood. Her feet screamed. She ignored them. "How many?" "Don't know." "At least 3, maybe more." They grabbed their things and started moving fast. The sun was just starting to rise. The woods were gray and shadowy. They moved north, pushing through thick brush and over fallen trees. Behind them, the voices got louder. "There, I see tracks." "This way." Amelia and Marcus ran. Her feet were bleeding again. Every step left a red mark on the ground. She knew they could follow that. She knew they were leaving a trail, but there was nothing she could do about it. They came to a ravine. It was deep and narrow with steep sides. A small stream ran at the bottom. Marcus looked at Amelia. "We got to jump." "I can't." "Yes, you can." On 3, 2, 3, they jumped. Amelia hit the ground hard and rolled. Pain shot through her ankle. She bit down on her tongue to keep from screaming. Marcus landed next to her and immediately pulled her to her feet. "Keep moving." They stumbled along the bottom of the ravine, splashing through the stream. The water was cold. It felt good on Amelia's burning feet. They moved as fast as they could, but Amelia was slowing down. Her ankle was swelling. She was limping badly. Behind them, they heard the men reach the edge of the ravine. They went down there. "Go around." "Cut them off." Marcus cursed under his breath. He looked at Amelia. "Can you climb?" She looked at the steep walls of the ravine. "I don't know." "Try." They found a spot where the wall was slightly less steep. Marcus climbed up first, then reached down to pull Amelia up. She grabbed his hand and tried to climb. Her feet slipped on the wet rocks. She fell back down. She tried again. This time she made it halfway up before her ankle gave out. She fell again. The voices were getting closer. "I can't," Amelia said. "Go without me. Tell them about Thornhill. Tell them what's happening. Make them listen." Marcus climbed back down into the ravine. He grabbed Amelia by the shoulders. "I ain't leaving you. We both make it or neither of us does. Now get up." Amelia looked into his eyes. She saw something there she hadn't seen in a long time. Determination, hope, belief. She got up. Marcus helped her climb. It was slow, painful, but they made it to the top. They pulled themselves over the edge and kept running. The voices behind them were close now, so close she could hear individual words. "I see them. Don't let them get away." A gunshot rang out. The bullet hit a tree next to Amelia's head. Bark exploded. She ducked and kept running. Another shot. This one went wide. They were firing blind, shooting at movement through the trees. Then they broke through the tree line. In front of them was a clearing. And in the clearing were houses. Real houses with smoke coming from chimneys. People were outside working in gardens, hanging laundry. They stopped what they were doing and stared. Amelia and Marcus stumbled into the clearing. Behind them, the men burst through the trees. 3 of them. They saw the settlement and stopped. One of them raised his rifle. "Those 2 are runaways. They're our property." An old man stepped forward from the crowd. He was black with white hair and a beard. He walked with a cane, but his voice was strong. "Ain't no property here, just free people. And you're trespassing. We got a right to our. You got a right to leave right now before I get my rifle." More people stepped forward. Men and women. Some held tools. Some held guns. They formed a line between the 3 men and Amelia and Marcus. The 3 men looked at each other. They were outnumbered. They knew it. "This ain't over," one of them said. "Yes, it is," the old man replied. The 3 men backed away slowly. Then they turned and disappeared into the woods. Amelia's legs finally gave out completely. She fell to the ground. Marcus knelt beside her. The old man walked over and looked down at them. "Where y'all come from?" "Thornhill Plantation," Marcus said. "And there's 40 more people still there who need help." The old man's face went hard. "Thornhill, that place is supposed to be gone." "It ain't, and they're keeping people enslaved, pretending the war never happened. Pretending freedom never came." The crowd murmured. The old man looked at Amelia. "That true, girl?" Amelia nodded. She couldn't speak. She was too exhausted, too broken. The old man turned to the crowd. "Get the sheriff. Get the federal marshal. We're ending this today." 2 days later, Amelia sat on the porch of a small house in the settlement. Her feet were bandaged properly now. A woman named Clara had washed her wounds with soap and warm water, applied salve, and wrapped them in clean white cloth. Clara had also given her a new dress, blue cotton with small yellow flowers. It was the first new thing Amelia had ever owned. She watched the road. She had been watching it since dawn. Marcus sat next to her. He was watching, too. "They'll come," he said. The marshal gave his word. "Words don't mean much," Amelia replied. "These ones do. I made sure of it." The old man who had saved them was named Samuel. He had been born enslaved in Alabama. He escaped when he was 16 and made it north. After the war ended, he came back south and helped build this settlement. He called it New Hope. 40 families lived here now. They farmed, they built, they lived free. Samuel had sent word to the federal marshal in Jackson. He told him about Thornhill Plantation, about the people still enslaved there, about the laws being broken. The marshal had promised to investigate, but promises were easy. Action was hard. Amelia didn't let herself believe anything would change. She had learned not to hope too much. Hope hurt worse than anything when it got taken away. But then she saw them. A group of men on horses coming down the road, at least 20 of them. The federal marshal rode in front. He wore a dark suit and a badge on his chest. Behind him were deputies and soldiers. They carried rifles and official papers. Samuel walked out to meet them. Amelia and Marcus followed. "You Samuel?" the marshal asked. "I am. I'm Marshal Clayton. Got your message. I'm here to investigate these claims about Thornhill Plantation." "Ain't claims," Samuel said. "It's truth. And I got 2 witnesses right here who can prove it." Marshal Clayton looked at Amelia and Marcus. His eyes lingered on Amelia. She was just a child, thin, scarred, her eyes older than they should be. "You're from Thornhill?" he asked her. "Yes, sir." "And you say people are still being held there as slaves?" "Yes, sir. 42 of them. Maybe 40, one now if they punished anyone for me running." The marshal's jaw tightened. He turned to his men. "Mount up. We ride now." "I'm coming with you," Marcus said. "Me too," Amelia added. The marshal looked at her. "Girl, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. Those people are my family. They need to see that somebody came back. They need to see that somebody cared." The marshal studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but you stay behind us. This could get ugly." They gave Amelia and Marcus horses. Amelia had never ridden before, but she learned fast. The group rode south toward Thornhill Plantation. It took most of the day. As they got closer, Amelia's heart started pounding. She didn't know what they would find. She didn't know if anyone was still alive. They reached the plantation just before sunset. The place looked exactly as she remembered. The big white house on the hill, the small shacks behind it, the fields stretching out in every direction. Smoke rose from the chimneys. People were still there. Marshal Clayton raised his hand. Everyone stopped. "Spread out. Surround the property. Nobody leaves until I say so." The men moved into position. The marshal rode up to the main house with 6 deputies behind him. Amelia and Marcus stayed back, but close enough to see. Thomas Thornhill stepped out onto the porch. He was a large man with a red face and gray hair. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand. He looked at the marshal and smiled. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "I'm Federal Marshal Clayton. I'm here to investigate reports of illegal enslavement on this property." Thornhill's smile didn't move. "I don't know what you're talking about. I run a farm here. My workers are paid employees." "Is that so? Then you won't mind if I speak with them." "Not at all. But you're wasting your time." The marshal dismounted and walked toward the shacks behind the main house. Amelia followed at a distance. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might break through her chest. The people were gathering outside now. They had heard the horses. They had seen the men with guns and badges. They stood in a group, silent, afraid. Amelia saw faces she knew. Ruth was there. She looked older, thinner, but alive. Ruth saw Amelia and her eyes went wide. The marshal stepped forward. "My name is Marshal Clayton. I'm a federal officer. I need to ask you all some questions. Are you being held here against your will?" Nobody spoke. They looked at each other. They looked at Thornhill standing on his porch. They looked at Cyrus Gann, who had appeared from somewhere with his rifle. "Are you free to leave whenever you want?" the marshal asked. Still silence. "Are you paid for your work?" Nothing. Amelia couldn't take it anymore. She stepped forward. "They're scared," she said loudly. "They're scared because if they tell the truth, they'll be punished. They've been punished their whole lives for telling the truth." She walked toward the group. Ruth reached out and grabbed her hand. "Amelia," Ruth whispered. "Child, what are you doing? What I should have done a long time ago." Amelia turned to face Marshal Clayton. "These people have been enslaved here since before I was born. Mr. Thornhill's father started it. He kept us hidden. He told us the war never ended. He told us we were still property. He beat us. He worked us. He killed people who tried to run. I'm only 12 years old, and I've seen 6 people murdered here. 6 people buried in unmarked graves in those woods." The marshal's face went pale.
"That's a lie!"
Thornhill shouted from the porch. "That girl is a liar and a thief. She ran away and now she's trying to cause trouble. If it's a lie," Amelia said, "then why did you send dogs to kill me? Why did Cyrus Gann hunt me like an animal? Why do these people have scars on their backs from whips?" She turned to Ruth. "Show him." Ruth hesitated. Then slowly she turned around and lifted the back of her shirt. Her back was covered in thick raised scars, old ones and new ones, years of beatings carved into her skin. One by one, others turned and showed their backs, men, women, even children. All marked, all broken. Marshal Clayton's hands balled into fists. "Mr. Thornhill," he said quietly, "you're under arrest."
"For what?"
"These people work for me. For illegal enslavement, for kidnapping, for murder, and for violating the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution." Thornhill threw his whiskey glass. It shattered on the porch steps. "You can't do this. This is my property. These are human beings." The marshal interrupted. "And they're free. They've been free since 1865. And you've been breaking federal law for 30 years. He nodded to his deputies. "Arrest him. And arrest that overseer, too." Who Cyrus Gann tried to run. He didn't make it 10 feet before 2 soldiers tackled him to the ground. Thornhill was dragged off his porch in handcuffs. He screamed and cursed the whole way. The people from the shacks watched in stunned silence. Then someone started crying. Then someone else, then everyone. They weren't sad tears. They were something else. Relief, disbelief, fear, joy. All mixed together. Ruth pulled Amelia into her arms and held her tight. "You came back," Ruth whispered. "You came back for us." "I promised myself I would," Amelia said. "If I made it, if I survived, I'd come back." The marshal approached them. "Miss, I'm going to need statements from everyone here. It's going to take time, but I promise you, justice will be served. These men will face trial, and all of you will be compensated for what was done to you." "We don't want money," Ruth said. "We want to be left alone to live our lives. You'll get that too. I give you my word." Over the next 3 days, the marshal and his men documented everything. They took statements. They found the graves in the woods. They collected evidence. They arrested 3 more men who had helped Thornhill maintain his illegal operation. The people of Thornhill Plantation were given 2 choices. They could stay and work the land as free people with ownership rights, or they could leave and go wherever they wanted. Most chose to stay. It was the only home they had ever known. But now it would be theirs. Samuel helped them set up a council to govern themselves. He helped them file the legal paperwork to claim ownership of the land. He helped them understand what freedom actually meant. Amelia chose to stay, too. Not at Thornhill. She couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. Too many memories. But she stayed at New Hope. Clara and her husband took her in. They treated her like a daughter. Marcus stayed, too. He and Amelia became close friends. He taught her to read. She learned fast. Within 6 months, she could read better than most adults. She read everything she could find: books, newspapers, legal documents. She wanted to understand the world. She wanted to make sure no one could ever lie to her again. Thomas Thornhill's trial took place 8 months later. Amelia testified. So did Ruth. So did 12 other people from the plantation. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Thornhill was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He died there after 18 months. Heart attack. Cyrus Gann got 15 years. He served 12 before being released. He disappeared after that. Nobody knew where he went. Nobody cared. The 3 Rottweilers were never found. Some people said they ran wild in the woods. Others said they were put down. Amelia never asked. She didn't want to know. 5 years after her escape, Amelia stood on the porch of her own small house in New Hope. She was 17 now, taller, stronger. The scars on her feet had faded but never disappeared. She wore them as reminders. Ruth lived 2 houses down. She was older now, but healthier. She smiled more. She had started a small garden and spent her days tending it. She said it felt good to grow something for herself instead of someone else. Marcus had married a woman from the settlement. They had a baby boy. Marcus worked as a carpenter and helped build new houses as more people arrived. New Hope was growing. Amelia worked as a teacher. She taught children to read and write. She taught them their rights. She taught them their history. She made sure they knew what had been done to their grandparents and great-grandparents. She made sure they knew what freedom cost. One evening, a young girl came to her after class. "Miss Amelia," the girl said, "is it true you ran from dogs?" "It's true." "Were you scared?" Amelia knelt down to look the girl in the eyes. "I was terrified every second, but I ran anyway." "You want to know why?" The girl nodded. "Because being scared don't mean you can't be brave. Being scared just means you're still alive. And as long as you're alive, you can choose. You can choose to give up, or you can choose to keep going. I chose to keep going. And that's what made all the difference." The girl smiled and ran off to join her friends. Amelia watched her go. She thought about that night 5 years ago. The dogs, the darkness, the terror. She thought about the choice she made, the choice that changed everything. She thought about the 42 people who were finally free because one 12-year-old girl decided she would rather die running than live in chains. She thought about all the people who would never know their names. All the people who ran and didn't make it. All the people who died believing freedom was just a lie. And she made herself a promise. The same promise she made every day: to remember them, to honor them, to make sure their suffering meant something, to make sure it never happened again. The sun set over New Hope. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the streets. People sat on their porches and talked and laughed. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was theirs, and it was free. And that was everything. Freedom is not given. It is taken. It is fought for. It is earned with blood and pain and sacrifice. But once you have it, once you truly understand what it means, you can never go back. You can never unsee the truth. You can never unknow that you have the right to choose your own path. The greatest weapon against oppression is not violence. It is the refusal to accept the lie. The refusal to believe you are less than human. The refusal to accept that your chains are permanent. Amelia was 12 years old when she learned this lesson. She was small and weak and afraid. But she had something her captors could never take away, the knowledge that she deserved better and the courage to act on it. That courage saved 43 lives, including her own, and it proved something that tyrants have always feared, that one person, armed with nothing but truth and determination, can break a system built on lies. Amelia ran into darkness, not knowing if she would survive. But she ran toward light, toward freedom, toward hope, and she made it. Not because she was special, but because she refused to accept that she wasn't.